Monday, they're establishing their strategy and their targets for the week. And Friday is, did we get there? Yes, fantastic. Let's look at that. If no, why no? Let's look at that. And then specific coaching around those deals. I also, inside of that weekly rhythm, expect to see time for that professional development, which is one around the tools and understanding best practices and continuing to emphasize that. It's also time to have one-on-one questions, talk about career, talk about direction of the pipeline, overall strategy, things of that nature. For me, my FLSMs are highly involved, and I think that having a highly involved FLSM team is the number one most important thing to the overall sales team's success.
This is the Revenue Vault, the show built for unstoppable CROs, VP of Sales, and GTM architects who engineer revenue machines that obliterate quotas. Hey, I'm Mark Chan, CEO of Vendly. If you're here to build a bulletproof system that scale pipeline velocity at enterprise speed, you're in the right place. Today, we're sitting down with Tim Johnson, VP of Sales at IFS and former top VP of Sales at Salesforce and Xerox. Tim is a sales lead who compressed new hire ramp time from 12 months to just 1 quarter. That's a 75% reduction in time to productivity. He's institutionalized deep qualification frameworks such as using MEDDPICC and challenging methodologies. He's boosted CRM hygiene by over 70%, and he built training systems so effective that his teams consistently hit presence level year after year. But here's what makes this conversation essential. Tim reveals the exact weekly rhythm every frontline sales manager needs to run, how he deploys the AI to eliminate 5-10 hours of admin work per rep weekly, and why he refuses to hire lone wolves. We dissect his systematic approach to deal qualification that scales across enterprise organizations, his controversial take on leading from both ends simultaneously, and the 3 tactical AI implementations every revenue leader should deploy this quarter. Here's the bottom line. If you want to engineer a revenue org that operates like precision machinery, this episode contains a blueprint. Let's go. So Tim, what do you believe puts your revenue org in the very top percentile against other orgs?
Yeah, I think there's been a few things over my career that I've seen that has been really successful. At Salesforce, we really institutionalized deep qualification using MEDDPICC and challenger frameworks, which is something that I actually put in place in my enterprise organization and embedded into our CRM deal progression. And it really helped increase the qualification of those, helped with managing large deals, put us in President's Club for a number of years following kind of the deep qualification that we were doing. And, you know, I know you've really emphasized like a no fluff tactical execution. And that's really what I centered our forecast around and our team meeting. And I think it's exactly what we need for full transparency and for everyone in the organization to be working coherently and moving as one gear together instead of against each other, which we see all too often.
Yeah, I love it, right? And I think I'm a big fan of methodologies like, MEDDPICC, right? And one of the things, though, I've seen, though, is when some organizations, when they deploy MEDDPICC, like they have the CRM stages to kind of match, MEDDPICC, right? It becomes like a checkbox for some teams. So for you, how did you ensure it wasn't like just a checkbox for a team, like, oh, cool, we kind of hit each of these components versus actually fully utilizing as a qualification method?
Absolutely. So I think that's so key. And one of the things that I'd like to delineate here is that it wasn't that MEDDPICC matched up to our deal funnel. The actual staging gates had parts of MEDDPICC, but it also had other parts that were essential to the deal moving forward. So it was really part of the opportunity homepage. And the way that we used it is by incorporating conversations the reps were having, using technology like Gong to pull out important parts and feed it directly into the sales CRM. So that the reps didn't just feel like, oh, this is something else that I need to put in, but it gave real-time visibility. It automated the process. and it allowed it to become part of the narrative of how we were coaching the reps and then how that was manifesting in reality within our opportunities. And I think that feedback loop is absolutely critical for any second, third line managers to really understand how they put a process in place at scale and get it adopted.
I love that so much. You said it so well, Tim, because there's a couple key components that I think I want to make sure get really emphasized here, which is number one, you're putting the right tech stack into place, right? So obviously you were at Salesforce, you used Salesforce as obviously your CRM.
Yep.
You had a more detailed deal funnel process, but also you had fields specifically in the opportunity that aligned to the methodology as followed. But then you utilize a tool like Gong recordings, and you automated the data to flow from Gong into there. So you're moving some of the minutia of trying to, reps trying to write notes, and they actually have detailed, probably, quotes or whatnot from the calls into there. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Awesome.
think when I started this project and tracking it, we actually saw CRM, we called it CRM hygiene, but we actually saw it increase by over 70%.
Amazing.
Right. And the change that this means to deal forecasting, especially when you're going up multiple levels inside of a big organization like Salesforce, and the ability for my senior leadership to see that territory and to see that book of business, it changed the conversation 180 degrees. And I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, I love that. And then I think in a big part, right? Because we're talking about the tech piece and make it easier, and we're talking about visibility from a leadership perspective. But as you and I both know, a company can invest a lot of money into deploying these type of tech resources, but their team can't run a proper discovery or run the process to actually get the right intel to get into the system. It becomes useless. So how did you, as the leader, develop your teams to get to that point where they're not just running a transactional discovery.
Right.
They're actually running a proper discovery where you can actually gather these elements.
Yeah. Yeah. I think training here is key. And I think ongoing training in small groups with accountability is really the way that I started to set up training within my organization. I come from a background I worked at the Y when I was younger, kind of helping developmentally challenged children kind of learn through different modalities. And so I think what we are missing in the workforce today is that it has all moved to digital, self-paced, doesn't matter when, where, or what. And I think what I learned when I was younger is that you need that digital self-paced is fine, but you need that interaction with an instructor. You need an instructor who is asking you, hey, show me what I showed you last week, and follow up and go that extra route. And I think all too often, sales leaderships put these kinds of critical tasks to the side and just say, oh, it's training, or, oh, they checked the box on the digital training tool or whatever it is. And so I think actually getting in here and saying to the reps, these are the top five, what we want to ask to get the M, what we want to ask to get the E, going through MEDDPICC, or even, sometimes weaving in there like spin selling. Also, challenger selling is something that I'm a huge proponent of. And even, having my teams read things like Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blunt, or even classics like, Zig Ziglar, kind of helped, add to that methodology and say, what is one more question we can add to that list? So I think at this point, we really have a defined set of questions that lead to opportunities that we enable in the early days of training, that we then role play with our reps. We hear them asking the questions. We use the technology like Gone to analyze those customer meetings, as well as being on them as supportive executive sponsors. And then we circle back for that one-on-one coaching. And I think again, you got to have that full cycle wheel to kind of get that feedback. But using that, I've seen training go down from when I took over the helm at Salesforce about 4 years ago. Training was about eight to 12 months, depending on where you came in the year. And
Yeah.
we got that down to a quarter.
Mm.
A quarter.
Wow.
And that and that I want to say is also augmented by relevant ongoing training. And I
Mm.
want to point out the sales tools here in specifically, because all too often, we might give sales training on product, CRM, but I feel like it's pretty rare to get training on a Zoom info, a demand base, a
Right.
sixth sense in outreach. And it's kind of like, hey, we have these tools, go use them. And it's like, how and
Right.
where and what's the best, right? And so what I started to do was bringing in our direct support representatives from these organizations as direct connects with our new training cohorts so that they could be trained directly one-on-one. And by that, I freed up FTE time from within my organization.
Yeah.
I got the direct information and the latest trainings, and my new reps were really able to work from here's what we do to start, here's kind of medium usage, here's advanced usage,
Yeah.
and go through that crawl, walk, run approach through all the tools, not just a product feature set or something to that effect.
You said it so well, Tim, and I love the focus on you're creating a culture of like high performance, what you're doing, right? I mean, to compress it's called a 12-month ramp time down to a quarter, right? So basically 75% reduction is massive, right? Because obviously it's speed to value, you reduce turnover as a result. It's always amazing benefits when you produce faster.
Yeah.
But you're also leveraging subject matter experts from those companies. So even from the tech stack perspective, they're not just giving a bunch of tech tools, which half of them never been trained on.
Right.
They're actually getting trained by those companies, which I love. Now, I think one of the things that's really, really critical is we talk about the frontline sales leaders so vital, right, to really ramp them up. And to take someone from taking 12 months to ramp up to 4 months or 3 months or even less it takes a level of having a strong manager rhythm to develop them properly. For the ideal frontline sales leader, what do you see as the ideal rhythm they're running each week to provide that level of training for their team to ramp their skills up?
Yeah, I think a weekly rhythm is
Mm.
actually something that I've preached about a lot within my organization. And, the people who don't get it think that it's micromanaging, and the people who do get it understand that being highly organized and strategic leads to high results,
That's right.
right? So we go so far as to say, hey, we want every new rep to have, starting week 2, literally now, is an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon blocked off for cold prospecting. This means you come with your list ready. It's not that we're doing research, we're not doing this, that. You come with your list ready, 2 or 3 talking points, quickly synthesized by AI for each individual. Shouldn't take more than 15 to 20 minutes, and you come ready with that. And then kind of looking at what that takes to go from every stage of, okay, we've started here at this kind of interval of an hour here, hour there. What else do we need to be doing? Okay, well, now we've started to advance from being a new hire. Now we have our territory. We need to have a specific strategy game plan, I call it. For
Yep.
it's a really
Mhm.
methodical document around identifying all the power players, power messaging within an organization, being able to map it out in real time, being able to see where we're going within that organization and the centers of power around a specific opportunity. And I think going through that weekly rhythm, I want to see my FLSMs do a few things, including weekly one-on-ones, weekly team meetings, right? The one-on-one should happen early in the week where the AEs are calling their week. I want to hear what their I call it goals, hits, and misses, right? So Monday they're establishing their strategy and their targets for the week, and Friday is, did we get there? Yes, fantastic. Let's look at that. If no, why no? Let's look at that. And then, kind of specific, coaching around those deals. I also, inside of that weekly rhythm, expect to see time for that professional development, which kind of comes in two forms for me, which is one around the tools that we kind of talked about and understanding best practices and continuing to emphasize that. And it's also career coach. It's also time to have one-on-one questions, talk about career, talk about direction of the pipeline, overall strategy, things of that nature. So for me, my FLSMs are highly involved. And I think that having a highly involved FLSM team is the number one most important thing to the overall sales team's success.
100% agree. And it's interesting, right? Because, I talk to a lot of sales execs, to frontline sales leaders, and, what you're describing, the frontline sales leader, I have found, generally speaking, most of them do not run that level of rhythm, right?
Right.
Where, to be very specific, they're inconsistent one-on-ones, very transactional. The meeting is very much a very quick, they're on a soapbox. It's not interactive. They're not calling out what they're doing. There's no real training. There's no set prospecting blocks, right? I came from the field sales world, very similar to you, because you came from Xerox, right? And
Yeah.
we had a level of rhythm that was very intense, and most people could not keep up. But you know what? It drove performance. It drove results. It got things done. And there's a reason why the company's been around for a long time. So when you take over a market or region, and you see you have, and I think a frontline sales leader who's not executing these things, right?
Mhm.
Which I'm sure you've probably seen that. Oftentimes I found it's not because they don't want to do it, it's because they didn't know, were never trained to do it, right? They're just kind of a rep who got promoted, right? So if you have a leader who's kind of like that, what's the first thing you do to help set the tone and develop them so they can actually run that elite routine or rhythm we just discussed?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I think in cultivating leadership, I'm looking at not only AEs that are top performers, but AEs that are also go-givers, which is a term I picked up quite a while ago. A great book, by the way, for leaders, if you're
Bob
out there
Burg,
and
that's the
interested.
author.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really find that you need to lead and train in two ways. And this is actually, gets me when somebody says they lead from the front or they lead from the back. And I would say, well, whichever one they say, well, what's happening to the other end?
Yeah.
I think you gotta go from both ends. So
Yeah.
for me, I'm doing everything from helping my team break into accounts. Literally, I'm picking up the phone in an hour to make some cold calls to a few C-level executives. And that's working in tandem with somebody who said, hey, I'm trying to break here, here, here. I see you might have a contact, or I see you might have some prior experience. Let's put that together and help break in. And then also kind of leading from the back, I need to help my FLSMs understand the processes that they need to put in place, the systems that they need to put in place. And oftentimes we're not even talking about tools or things of that nature. We're talking about, how do you organize your team? How do you orient your time? How do you look at your pipeline and prioritize where we want to spend our hours of the day? Who are those reps that really take that CEO autonomy of their territory, and you really kind of just need to be there to bounce ideas? Who are those reps that really are maybe coming from SDR land, and we really need to help understand how to move that sales cycle forward or work multi-threaded with an account? So, I mean, oftentimes with my new FLSMs, I'm in their coaching meetings with my AEs. We're doing this together. I'm giving some feedback. They're giving some feedback. Then we're getting off the line. I'm picking my phone up, calling my FLSM. You did this fantastically. Great way to drive that motivation. Great way to explain that new spiff. Great way to orient them around the new product bundle. Now we need to talk a little bit more about how they're working multi-threaded in an account. I see 2 or 3 opportunities where it looks like their primary decision maker is only uni-threaded, and we need to at least have, my stats show that our biggest deals close when we have 4 to 7 multi-threaded stakeholders, right? So really engaging with my FLSM to hear that feedback. And we do use Gone on internal coaching calls as well. It's not only a deal intelligence tool, but it's a coaching intelligence tool, which is key.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you dropped a lot of high value bombs right there, right? I mean, and there's a couple of things I think is really, really critical that you're doing super well. There is, you know, when I look at really elite leaders, right, who run large orgs, they hang out in the what I call both the clouds above. They can see, they look down, but they're down in the dirt. They do and they do everything in between, right? And what you're talking about here is not only are you setting the vision for your frontline sales managers and sales leaders, but you're also getting in the weeds and showing them. You're like also going into the deals, you're going into granular, like looking at opportunities where there's pink flags, there's red flags, and you're showing them what's missing. So you actually teach them how to actually coach through opportunities themselves. And I found because, and some people think it might be a little micromanaging, whatever, right? But the people who really get it, they love it, right? They love that
Right.
level of coaching. I have found when you are able to be in the clouds and also in the dirt as a sales leader, you actually increase the accountability of your org across the board because they also realize, like Tim's gonna realize like you're not in the weeds and you don't want to be called it. Not in a bad way, but it's
Right.
more so like, okay, I want to make sure I look good to my boss, so I better be on top of my stuff too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think that's so important, and having that unification inside of the team where, I really do not hire lone wolves. And that's one of the biggest things is that I want folks who are taking that ownership, and when they win, they take it to the next guy on the team or gal on the team and help them to be just as successful and
Mhm.
take that learning away. And more so than that, they open up their successful clients and customers
Mhm.
to other reps to help them leverage not only those stories, but those references. I think all too often we see this kind of ownership of, oh, I don't want to get my person on the line. I don't want to
Mhm.
this, that. And it's like, if we're doing things the way we should be, creating a sales approach that is customer centric
Mhm.
and customer obsessed. I love those terms.
Mhm.
If we're creating that approach, we should be having wildly successful customers, which we do many times. And those folks we need to be elevating, not only helping them to talk with other clients,
Mhm.
but helping to elevate their careers. And that's something that I talk about my FLSMs about when it comes to executive connections
Yeah.
is understanding, what do you want from this
Mhm.
project? Why is it going to matter to you? Is it going to mean your shares get
Yeah.
increased? Is it going to mean your shares get more valuable? Is it going to
Right.
mean, and being able to have a relationship where you're able to dive into, you know, they always say sales is money focused, but I think jobs and careers are money focused. And there's
Oh yeah.
not an executive out there that doesn't understand their stock plan, their compensation
Right.
plan. And if you weave that into your conversation as you're going up the totem pole within the enterprise organization, your ability to create real value inside of already what a market leading solution is doing is going to be exponentially higher than the next person.
100% right. Now, I want to double tap something you just mentioned just a little bit ago, which is the hiring component, right? Not hiring the lone wolves, right? And being able to hire that level of talent who is more of a go giver. So for you, what are some strategies maybe you've implemented to do your best? Because it's never perfect, right? But to do your best to have the highest likelihood that you're hiring the right type of future leader.
Yeah. I think some of the things that I've really done to make sure that we're hiring the right leader is aligning culture with past experiences.
Mhm.
So a lot of times when we're talking about, accountability or customer centric approach or things that they've done, I really like the STAR method, and I've
Mhm.
found that to really be action and oriented based. And I like to hear about what that leader has done to actually remove roadblocks for their team in real time. How did they move that deal forward? What insights were they able to give and help? And some of the things that really have like stuck out to me that I've heard. And just a little bit about me is that before Salesforce, I was in a procurement company for many, many years. I really understand how that process, procurement and legal, works into the
Mhm.
sales cycle. So one of the things that like kind of perked my ears is that I had an occasion where someone was articulating the ability to organize a SaaS perpetual license deal closing in this quarter when the customer didn't have their budget yet. Their budget was going to drop the next quarter, setting up milestones to align with that, and then setting up multipliers if those milestones were missed, right? To ensure that we had business continuity and there wasn't added risk to the business. And in that way was able to move the deal forward, got it closed with the client, and also was able to have them come be like a speaker for them at the next conference, which was a few weeks down the road. And so I'm looking for those folks who bring that thinking that's outside of the box and, kind of new and different. I think one of the things that I've seen that have stalled folks in my career is that they get into an organization and they don't understand where to go with the red tape. They're not making the internal connections needed to be able to, ping the chief legal officer and say, hey, I have a client who's at the 12th hour. We got to get this over the line. There's just one or two things. And that's something that I really take to heart. So understanding how leaders make internal connections and how they help elevate their own brand to really make sure that I'm bringing people into the fold that can get things done and that have that good reputation. And I think lastly, I'm looking for folks who are interested in winning where they are today, but also having a future vision, whether that's becoming, the best, FLSM and building out the biggest team, or whether that's continuing to grow within my sales organization, and the why behind that. Right? I want to buy a pool for the kids. I want to buy, take my wife to Paris for the first time, whatever it is. Like, those are the questions I'm asking people to not only understand their professional goals and experiences, but understanding the why behind that and then helping them to empower that. And there's nothing that gives me more gratitude than someone on my team sending me a picture from, Disney World of their team, or, I had one of my FLSMs, she took her kids white water rafting down the Grand Canyon, and I got a picture of them in the Grand Canyon. And it's just like, those are the things that I love to do, is to help people reach their goals, reach their dreams, and then go even beyond where they thought was possible.
Amazing. I think it's really, really powerful, right? Because you hit a lot of key points from, how you're asking star level question, which are, situation, task, action, result, for those who are not familiar with that model, right? But getting them to be able to share very explicit, detailed, creative ways that how they work within internal organizations, the external, to bring deals to a close or develop people, to the point of even talking about how ultimately when we bring in great reps, great leaders, we're helping them achieve amazing things. And I think you'll appreciate this. One thing I used to do, I had a decent sized sales org, got 100 plus employees. And every 6 months, I would have my EA email every single person and say, hey, over the last 6 months, just send us a picture of something you're super proud of that you have achieved. Right. It doesn't have to be you at President's Club or any awards dinner or winning a trophy or a leaderboard. Something that means something to you in the last 6 months. And we would get a flood of pictures from people going on these trips, to having babies, to attending graduations, to paying their house off in cash, to donating time. And we take all these pictures actually, and we put it into a newsletter, like an actual newsletter. Yeah. And I'd write a note, and then we printed out copies, and we would mail a physical copy to every single person in their family. Yep. Addressed to their spouse. So that way they would look at it together. They could see everyone's photos, and, it'd be like, we had another banner quarter or banner year or blah, 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 blah. We said X number of people President's Club here, but that doesn't matter at all. What's most important are these things that you see in here. More time with your family, picking up your kids when you want to, attending your kids' ballerina recital. I mean, they're just in the emotion they felt because that was so critical, right? Because at the end of the day, I found, I hit the numbers important to a certain extent, but if they achieve their personal goal, quota is a byproduct.
Absolutely.
It's an absolute byproduct,
Absolutely.
As we look at your current org, what's maybe one challenge with your org? If it doesn't get fixed or figured out in the next 12 months, you'll be kicking yourself.
Yeah, I think an AI platform that is streamlined, cohesive, flexible, and scalable, I've seen us just in the last 6 months try 3 different things enterprise wide. Many millions of dollars have been spent, and each one of them has kind of been put on hold or been put on the sideline, and it leads to countless hours of things wasted. And the excuse that we get told is that things are moving so fast, I don't know where it's going to be tomorrow. And my reaction is, when in your life did you ever know what was coming tomorrow?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, like, right?
Yeah.
There's,
Yeah.
that's life. We know what we know today. We act with intention. We're thoughtful about where it's going, but we don't let the future hold us back from moving forward.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that figuring this out, right? And again, I'm not asking us to figure out what's coming tomorrow. That's not the question. The question is, it's not even a question in my mind. It's, let's find a market leading product, deploy it enterprise wide, have expectations and rules of usage, just like you would with a CRM or any other tool. Let's train to use it. Let's train ongoing. Let's make sure that people understand. Let's see the time benefit. Let's see the benefit that it's bringing overall, and let's continue to use it, right? It needs to be like any other, system where we sign up for 2 or 3 years. And at the end of that, we reevaluate. And if we need to move something different, then we do. But I think if we choosing a market leading solution that's up in the right of that Gartner Magic Quadrant, is something where they see innovation that's being put into their product roadmap, and that helps validate, okay, 2 or 3 years, we're good to go. I don't think ChatGPT is going to be gone in 3 years. Maybe so, but I don't see that
Highly
happening.
unlikely.
Highly unlikely, right?
Yeah.
Gemini is going to be here in 3 years. Copilot's going to be here in 3 years. And so, and this is the thing that I've talked to quite a few leaders about, is that, they can't get that strategy really cemented. As much as everybody is talking about it, I get the sense that what's coming tomorrow is holding everybody from moving into tomorrow. And we need to dispel that, and we need to move off of it. And that's what I'm trying to do from a cultural and a tools perspective.
And you're sort of spot on where it's called omission bias, right? As you're probably familiar, it's like the fear of like some making a bad decision outweighs potential gains you might be getting, right, or even the costs of it. And just so I understand, right, because you're looking to deploy and you change a culture, you're deploying the right type of AI tool, and then there's some resistance to it. What's like the number one like issue you're trying to solve with the AI tool, just so we have an understanding?
Yeah, I think the two biggest things that I'm looking to solve is correct information and time allocation, right? And that means that when an AE is using a tool and saying, "Hey, I'm selling to Pepsi, I want to sell this," what is the most important things that are going to resonate? It doesn't just spit back some, "Oh, they're working on sustainability and this." It's like, okay, well, and that's the difference. Really good AEs can read a 10K, and there's one sentence that's going to get the chief financial officer's attention, and they find that, and they're able. And so I feel like being able to hone in on the correct information. And one of the things that we're doing is creating a training function just around AI, right? And giving folks pre-populated templates and say, what you need to do is enter the name of the organization here and here and press enter. That's how easy it needs to be for folks to really be able to adopt it and streamline it. And that's the biggest challenge, but the biggest opportunity, as we generally see.
Well, 100%, right? Because you're spotting, right? Because this, I think, number one, it helps minimize that paralysis analysis that a lot of them get when they don't know how to look at a 10K report, or earnings transcript, or whatever, right? Or get overwhelmed by the tools. Then number two, when it's almost like push a button, easy, they're more likely to do it, right? So it actually reduces their time at spinning their wheels. Now, in the way you're currently doing right now, before you invest in heavily in the tool, are you building out like ChatGPT custom GPTs for your team? Is that how you're deploying it?
Yeah, we do build out custom GPTs for the team
Yeah.
using kind of our institutional knowledge, having things like product SKUs already in
Mhm.
there,
Beautiful. Yeah.
pricing tables, playbooks, things
Mm.
like that. And so, I think custom GPTs are just a few months old. And
Yeah.
so, but when that update came out, it
Yeah.
really was a game changer.
Mm.
And that certainly has helped utilization. I
Mm.
still think that utilization is being done by folks that are in mine and your age cohorts
Yeah.
and below. I'm still feeling a lot of kind of how do I use it and why should I
Mm.
from folks that are kind of a little bit further removed
Yeah.
from it, and
Mm.
understandably so, as we see with every technology.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is making it needs to be as easy as it is to use Zoom Info, as it
Yeah.
is to use Outreach and Salesforce, right? With, kind of buttons that easily kind of prompt you to
Mm.
the next thing. A lot of times people are like, okay, well, I said do research on this company. Well, it's not just that. It's I'm selling this. My goal is to
Right.
connect with them. We need to have a compelling message. It needs to be best in class. I'm looking
Oh,
for a tone that resonates with din din din, right?
yeah.
You still need to have the articulation and the ability to give the AI what you're looking for.
Correct.
And I will say we've now enabled the audio feature,
Mm.
which is another, kind of
Yeah.
recent development from a lot of
Yeah.
these tools. And that has helped, that has increased.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
It's still in its infancy. I find a lot of these tools are still inaccurate and
Yeah.
don't quite
That's interesting.
understand the industry jargon
Right.
to be able to pull in the most germane information. So I think that still needs some work there. But each one of these, the custom
Right.
GPTs, the audio features,
Yeah.
they're penetrating that, adoption bell curve just a little bit, a little bit, a little bit more.
I love it, right? I think I'm a huge nerd in this type of stuff. I'm always like I'm a tinker. I'm like the like the guy
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
randomly testing stuff to kind of see how well it works, right? And I could tell I think you and I are very similar. Probably hang out just nerd on stuff for a long time. And I'm sure there's gonna be some CROs, some sales VPs out there who are listening to this and they're like, oh my God, like I'm definitely and they actually might be some of those who are a little bit like
Yeah.
resistant to even like toy around. Like maybe they ask like ChatGPT basic questions. They never reprompt anything. They're not detailed at all. They treat it just like a Google search. For someone like that who's like maybe overwhelmed, who's in your type of role, what would you tell them to help get them on the same page, of the AI train, if you will?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, that feeling of feeling overwhelmed by everything in the market and all the different changes and updates is something that causes that paralysis.
Mm.
And what I'm a big fan of is we think about our team and our territory, no different than usual. What are the biggest things that we can do to make an impact on our team? Oh, it's, enhanced deal qualification, or it's, we need to put a scorecard together for opportunities or whatever it is, right? I'm asking my leaders, pick 3 of those per week and solve it using AI. So at the end of the week, you have something that works. Last week was after action review cards, right? And so now we have a standardized review card for the entire team with 4 simple boxes that
Mhm.
we're able to click. It gives you prompts, it goes to the next, right? And so it's a very succinct way to conduct that. What did we want to do? What did we do? What was the outcome? What can we do differently? Right? That process.
Mm.
And now it's embedded into our process as part of marking a deal closed lost. It automatically takes you to this
Mm.
form to fill out with your manager and then for us to analyze. And so, that's just an example of that one action was probably collectively taking my FLSMs anywhere from 5 to 10 hours a week
Mm.
throughout their team. And we've now got that down to almost literally a 4-minute process.
Mm. Amazing.
And so I want to see those 3 things a week, just 3 that we are doing that is moving the needle in a material way, and we can see the time and the insights, efficiency gains from those things. I'm a big fan of checklists,
Yeah.
but people use all kinds of
Totally.
things from Microsoft Notes to digital post-its, whatever it is that works for you on how you want to keep yourself oriented. I have a specific AI section in my weekly to do to make sure that it's a priority. Just like we should have in our weekly to dos prospecting time, time
That's
to
right.
get quotes out, demo time, right? You'll never see a leader not have time in their weekly calendar to close deals. AI is literally that important.
I love that. And I think there's a couple of key things you mentioned. I think it's really critical, right? Because you literally are inserting this level of deep thinking about AI and improving this is like cloud stuff, right? We're up in the clouds looking down into your calendar, your to-do list, right? And I think it's so vital for a lot of leaders because this is how you get ahead, is not thinking about today, tomorrow, or this quarter. You're thinking like 3 to 5 years in advance. What do we need to do now? How can we create the culture of it, right? But I think a second thing is like then you're deploying not just the vision for your team, but you're also holding them accountable for also embedding that culture too. And I'm sure they felt awkward at first, but when they get a little bit of momentum like this, they're like, oh, this is actually kind of amazing,
Yeah.
and that progress is like the ultimate motivation for them.
Right, absolutely. And getting out of the minutia and
Right.
taking some of that, the stuff where you ask your AE to do and they roll their eyes. When I see that and then I'm able to return and say, hey, I got that down to X amount. Like you said, not everything is about compensation. I've had people literally, I remember this fondly. I had someone cry because they were, this is how much time
Yeah.
and energy they put
Mhm.
into this task, and to
Yeah.
make their life so substantially easier was just like, it was everything to them.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think we're in a completely different time now where people are actually leveraging AI as a true support function to their role. I mean, it's amazing what can be done, right? That's just like if you're not to, you're already being left behind. Now we're gonna pivot a little bit before we wrap up because I could tell you're very tactical. You get very much in the weeds. What's maybe one tactical move you borrowed or stole from another company or leader that you still use today?
Interesting. Okay. So I had a leader talk to me about around forecasting, around the tactics of being able to forecast based on percentage in relation to the stage of the opportunity,
Mhm.
right? So if we're saying that an opportunity in stage one has 8% chance to close because it's in stage one. If you look at all your opportunities in that stage, and each stage has an increased relation to close rate, you're able to look and to forecast based on stage gating. And that was an absolute game changer. It actually came from John McCon, the author of The Qualified Sales Leader. And it was something that
Oh, yeah. Yep.
a prior SVP actually knew him personally and just drove that into my brain. And so anytime I'm looking at my larger sales funnel, I'm looking at that ability to close based on where the opportunity is in those stages. And that has allowed me to increase my forecast accuracy and increase my overall forecast value by talking to the customers in a way that matches that timeline of
Yeah.
progression, and being able to put little carrots and sticks in front of them to kind of keep them pulling and keep them moving
Right.
forward. So that's something that I'd recommend. And I challenge anybody out there listening to write down one thing on your team that people aren't willing to admit is a problem, and write that down and talk about that on your next team meeting, because that transparency I've found is so important
That's
to
right.
being able to understand where your team is going and how you can actually make a difference as an FLSM.
I love that. Both are fantastic, and I think a couple of key points that you mentioned, right? Because I think it's like you do the deal probability based off the deal stages, but you subtly threw this in. but you're like, that aligns to how the buyer basically buys. Like that's a really key piece, right? I think, and also the second piece of sharing the core problems of what's going on is amazing when you discuss as a team, because sometimes the problem that's being discussed is symptomatic and not a root cause. Right. And when you have other people talking about it, then you start realizing, oh, actually, there's actually a deeper root issue. Like instead of it's not that, or we don't have good reps, we're actually a wrong hiring profile, right? It's actually, we're actually not interviewing properly. It could be so many other systemic issues as a result. Amazing interview, Tim. If people want to learn more about you, get a hold of you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Tim N. Johnson, linkedin.com/Tim N. Johnson. Please shoot me a message, drop me a note. I'd absolutely love to connect. Really appreciate your time today, Marcus. Appreciate your leadership, the focus that you have. It was such a great experience, and looking forward to continuing the conversation online.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Revenue Vault. Now, if you got value, here's your next step. Go to VenleyConsulting.com/teams, get a free performance scan of your sales org. We'll show exactly where deals are stalled and how to actually fix it. And if this episode gave you even one insight worth sharing, send it to a sales leader you respect. I'm Marcus Shannon. Thanks for being in the room.